Isn't this one gonna be hard? Yeah. Okay. Hello guys, this is the Crispy Tiger here, and I am here to talk about which is better. Bioshock Infinite and The Last of Us. Since this is probably, hopefully, going to be remembered years to come, why don't I talk about the history of each of them? First, starting with Bioshock Infinite. Now, 2013, when Bioshock Infinite was released, it was, to say the least, universally acclaimed. I mean, there were some people who found flaws and didn't really like the game, and of course, some of those flaws were valid. But Bioshock Infinite, I think many people, even people who didn't like it, could agree that it was probably going to be on the Game of the Year list and maybe even win Game of the Year. Especially for DICE awards and many other awards, it was probably going to win. Here comes The Last of Us, a game made by Naughty Dog, people responsible for the Uncharted series, my favorite, part of my childhood, Jack, and many other games. And yeah, it was amazing, and it is amazing. But IGN, basically made a video talking about whether Bioshock or The Last of Us was better, and I'm here to pretty much put it down, as in really analyze it, because they only really put 4 minutes of thought into it. Really analyze whether the two were better, and considering the fact that I had the exact same playing experience with both of these games, which was watching a non-commentary walkthrough of them on YouTube, trying to plow through both very, very long games, then I figured, why not? Why don't I do so? And so I will do so. Here are the two games of the year for 2013, the contenders, and which is better, The Last of Us or Bioshock Infinite. So, first, let's start with the gameplay. This is the one I'm going to get out of the way first, considering the fact that I haven't actually played the game and instead just watched a no commentary walkthrough. Well, I'd have to give this to The Last of Us. To explain, Bioshock Infinite's gameplay was great. The Last of Us is better for the reason of it's just more fresh, and on top of that, what they're doing is something special, to explain it. By making you feel like a survivor, to know that you could just get taken out at any moment, is incredible on its own terms. The combat never gets old. The game is tiring and takes so much energy out of you, but the combat will never ever get old. And Bioshock Infinite, I can't say the same thing about that, considering the fact that in the middle, it just gets repetitive and all of the backtracking. In Bioshock Infinite, that middle part has a couple of problems within its gameplay, not to mention the formula is... they didn't really do much to expand on the formula besides Elizabeth's powers, which were decent and a new added freshness, to be honest. And on top of that, the skylines were great. But I still feel like The Last of Us really nailed it. Like, I can't come up with a flaw in The Last of Us gameplay. Besides maybe, I don't know if they did add this or not, but maybe a quick select button would have been helpful. But that's besides the point. I'm nitpicky on the gameplay. The Last of Us wins that fight, and yeah, that's how I compare the two. So once we got the gameplay out of the way, let's really analyze the stories and say which one's better, since both of them are mostly single player focused games. The Last of Us I know has multiplayer in it, but I'm not gonna talk about that. We're going to compare the two games and their single-player campaigns. Let's keep the multiplayer out of it. Let's talk about the characters first. If there's one thing that Bioshock and The Last of Us both share, it's the fact that both of them pretty much kill most of their supporting cast. I mean, yeah, the supporting cast are pretty worthless. The really only main meat of both of those games would be the relationship between this one older man and this one woman. Last of Us being Joel and Ellie, and Bioshock Infinite being Booker DeWitt and Elizabeth. And I'm gonna just say spoilers. It's probably gonna be in the title above, but yeah, I'm gonna get into spoiler territory and really analyze each and every character, starting with Bioshock Infinite. Comstock's not a very interesting villain. He never has been. I mean, unless you're listening to audio logs. If you weren't listening to the audio logs, he's not very interesting. He wouldn't be a very interesting villain. I know the audio logs make up half of the game, so maybe I shouldn't really count him out. But mostly he's just talking about racism and being a racist. And there's not really much character to him until the end when it's revealed that it's Booker DeWitt. And that's really kind of sucks. Daisy is also, she starts out an interesting character, and you wonder where they're gonna take her. Then she just goes ballistic, and really nothing much happens with her character. The one really most interesting side character besides Booker DeWitt and Elizabeth would have to be Jeremiah Fink, because he's smart and he actually does make sense, and all of his actions can be very justified. So yeah, I'd have to give it to I have to give the supporting cast really to The Last of Us, considering the fact that most of The Last of Us had a really good supporting cast. I mean, I cared about almost every single one of the supporting cast. And even the ones that I wasn't supposed to care for, I even cared for them at a certain point until they started getting rapey, and you know exactly who I'm talking about, which I'll get into. The supporting cast of The Last of Us. To explain, basically you start out with Tessa. Tess. And Tess is an interesting character. I don't know. Tess was an interesting character, but there wasn't much that I can describe about her besides her just being a hard ass, which is fine by me because she played a really good hard ass. But still, Tess didn't have as much personality. Matter of fact, The Last of Us characters, a lot of them were one note. To be fair, just weren't as one note as Bioshock Infinite. But Tess was an interesting character. It makes you think, like, what did she do before all of this happened? The way I like to imagine it is Tess was just a stay-at-home mom who got really, really pissed after the apocalypse happened. That's how I always imagined Tess, was probably a stay-at-home mom. Or maybe not. Like, I can't really think of a lot of like how I would imagine Tess. That's how I always imagined her, but I'm pretty sure people in the comments below will probably have something more interesting in how they imagine Tess. Yeah, that's how I imagine Tess. And then we get, after she out of nowhere dies. After that, it takes a while, but we do get another supporting character, Bob, who he is played brilliantly. I don't know who the actor is. I don't even know who it is, but he did such a splendid job on Bob, who is this very paranoid, I don't even want to call him a friend, because he's not much of a friend to Joel as much as he's just an acquaintance. And he has so many great lines and so many great moments with his character that you don't have many. When I think about it, all of the great moments are between Booker DeWitt and Elizabeth in Bioshock Infinite. None of them are really with the supporting characters, with the exception of Daisy, when she kills Jeremiah Fink and she has that hand on the wall. You see that bloody handprint. That's a great moment. But otherwise, supporting character moments, the main great ones, really have to do with Booker DeWitt and Elizabeth in Bioshock Infinite. Not very much the supporting characters, and the supporting characters have a lot of great moments in The Last of Us. Bob, who I just mentioned, and many other characters who had great moments, which I'm still going down the list of The Last of Us's characters. You also had some more characters. Henry and Sammy were great characters. I liked Sammy the entire way through, even though he made that one really really stupid choice of not telling anybody that he got bit. Yeah, actually that pissed me off a little bit. But Henry was also both of those characters were very decent characters, and both of them were very well acted. And they weren't one note. They were human beings with human feelings that unlike Tess, and even Bob to a certain point, because really it was mostly fat jokes and him being very paranoid and him being crazier and crazier as time went on. But yeah, it's decent. I really liked Henry and Sammy, and their deaths were absolutely. If there is one thing that I have to give Bioshock Infinite, they never made me angry with any of these characters' deaths. Any time. I mean, to be fair, Bioshock Infinite did pull a Hamlet and kill everybody, and I hate when games do that, when you basically kill the entire cast, because it gets rid of this sense of feeling and accomplishment, but Bioshock Infinite was able to do that in a way where it didn't piss me off that they killed off everybody. Last of Us was not the exact same way, because it seemed like The Last of Us was about to have focus. My main problem with The Last of Us, and if I had to give it a score, I'd still probably give it a 10, but that's besides the point. If I did have to come up with flaws for The Last of Us, I'd say it just wasn't focused at all. It didn't have a focus. Like, you saw that it had Sammy and Henry, and okay, even that's not true, because it does have a focus, which is technically and it was Ellie and Joel, but it's every time it took away some of that focus and gave other things focus, then it just quickly snapped out of that focus and made sure to focus on Joel and Ellie and got rid of that focus however way they needed to. And I thought that you could have had some really great moments afterwards and really great reactions with you could have done the rest of this game or gone through the rest of this game with Henry and Sammy alive. You didn't need to kill them. You could have gone through the rest of this. Okay, you probably couldn't have gone through the rest of this game with Tess alive, but you could have. I mean, I see a way that could have happened. Tess could have lived, but it was probably better not that she had lived, considering the fact that it made Bob. It gave some really great tension there. And it gave great moments, and a great understanding on why Joel kept Ellie. Why do I keep wanting to say Emma? It kept giving great moments and great understanding on why we kept Ellie in the first place. But even with that said, yeah, just killing Sammy and killing Henry was very out of nowhere, and just it was unnecessary to do that. It felt like it was done just for shock value. It had no purpose really. But even with that said, I got over it very fast, and I was cool with it. And then you get to other characters. The next one would be David. I liked David's character when I first met him, and I thought Ellie was being a bitch. And then they had to bring rape into it, and I was very uncomfortable sitting down watching that. I don't know how to react to that. It was something that made me go, oh, okay. That came out of nowhere and made me feel bad for calling Ellie for thinking Ellie was acting like a bitch. Because the whole boss fight was like, okay, this guy has gotten to the point where it's him locking children up into basement creepy. Then he actually does something that somebody would do to a kid trapped into a basement. And it was so... I can't even come up with a good description for how I felt at the time. Like, oh, we're gonna go there. And another problem. I actually no, there is one flaw. I guess this is the main flaw, is that they don't bring anything back up. I mean, after that moment, the energy kind of just stops, and it's very much more slower. Like, Ellie's not making many jokes with Joel anymore, if any. He's, I guess that's an achievable status, that they both have a very much more respect for each other. But at a certain point, it was just depressing, to say the least. Even those hope-bringing moments were depressing. Which is no problem. A game's allowed to be as depressing as it wants to, and God knows The Last of Us didn't hold back on being depressing. But still, I don't know why it had to go there. You could have just made him a murderer. You didn't have to make him a rapist too. I mean, oh God, it was bad. It was really bad. But I still liked that scene, and it had a character development on Ellie and Joel's part, and David was a good and small-time antagonist, which every antagonist is really a small-time antagonist besides the infected. I mean, every antagonist really just kind of appears. If anything, I'd say the one antagonist that they tried to make into the end an antagonist didn't work. I'd say, yeah, which was Marlene. Now Marlene is basically what Joel was. Joel is. She was the caretaker of Ellie this entire time before we even met Ellie. And therefore, yeah, it was... I didn't like what they did with her character. Or, it's not even what they did with her character. I didn't like how they ended it. Because that's when they crossed the point to where Joel was an anti-hero. They crossed the point from Joel being an anti-hero to just being an asshole. And my personal morals came in like, no. Matter of fact, we're going to talk about the ending later. I'll explain that. Marlene we'll talk about later. Everything, that will be saved for later. Yeah. But we've explored the characters long enough. I've been talking about, yapping about, the characters. So, let's talk about the powerful moments in this game and what the shocking moments were, which I technically did. But there's a long list to go down. Especially because we haven't covered much of Bioshock Infinite, have we? Okay, let's talk about Bioshock Infinite for a second. Its powerful moments. Now, Bioshock Infinite had a lot of powerful moments in it. The main powerful moments were pretty much the end. Where it just kept hitting again and 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 again. Yeah, I think that Bioshock Infinite had its powerful moment and its powerful moments, but that one powerful moment at the end where Elizabeth basically drowns you in the river. Yeah, that is surpassed any emotion that I got from either of these games. The emotion I felt in that one scene. Does Bioshock Infinite make much sense? Not a lot of it, no. It has a lot of things that don't make sense. But I was invested in those characters, and Elizabeth had something there that just broke me in that moment. I was broken, and I was sad, and it was bad. It was very bad. So Bioshock Infinite, in terms of my feelings of its powerful moments, it had a lot of powerful moments. And, I mean, there is one moment that I don't agree with most people, which is she goes into song at one point. I guess it's because the playthrough that I was watching, I never got that. And when I did hear about that, I didn't care. If that made sense. I just wasn't into that whole character. I was just like, oh, okay, so what? Because it didn't feel like a break to me. I wasn't in a break mode. I was just like, okay, this exists. It's slightly cheesy, but that's my opinion on that moment. Most people disagree with me, and that's fair. It is a good scene, but I don't know. I didn't have that emotional impact. that most people had with that one scene, which, yeah, I'm sure some people could say that's more powerful than the moments in the ending. But yeah, I really liked the ending. I really thought that the ending tied up Bioshock Infinite in a nice little bow, even if it didn't make sense. It ended it, which I genuinely liked, and I agreed with, and I was totally fine with that powerful moment that it had. But The Last of Us has many of those powerful moments, except instead of having, because there were a lot of powerful moments in Bioshock Infinite, but they were mostly at the end. You could point a few, but pretty much all of them were in the end. Everything that happened with Daisy at the end, Comstock's death at the end, just so many of those moments, they were all at the end. And the powerful moments within The Last of Us are actually all scattered throughout. I mean, sure, there's more at the end than there are in the middle and the beginning, but it's scattered through, and there are a lot of great scenes and a lot of just, like, really grabbing moments. Very immersive. Like, even if you weren't very interested in the story, you gotta admit that scene was amazing. Tessa's death scene was great. It was great. I absolutely adore that scene. Bob saying goodbye to Bob was awesome. Henry and even though I've been bitching about Henry's death and Sam's death, even though I've been bitching about it because I thought it was unnecessary, I still have to admit that those were great scenes. They caught me off surprise, and they were well acted and well written, and, it made sense why Henry did what he did. I mean, I don't agree with it. I thought it was stupid, but still. It was great. And just a lot of moments like that were just immensely powerful. The most powerful scene was Joel grabbing Ellie from stabbing the living crap out of David, pretty much ending that character. It had me from there. I was like, oh my god, I don't know what they're gonna do for the end, because I don't think they can surpass that moment, and they didn't. But still, come on, it was just a great moment, and great character building through that moment. I think that was the moment where I truly bonded with Ellie. Was right there. Like, not that I didn't bond with her this entire game. I was like falling in love with her pretty much, which I'm allowed to do because I'm 14. But yeah, it was wonderful. In terms of her powerful moments, the ending. Let's get to the ending. This is where everybody's gonna grab their pitchforks, because The Last of Us has pretty much been winning this entire time. I think Bioshock Infinite's ending was better than The Last of Us, and I'll explain why. Not that I haven't given enough hints or talked about the ending enough, but I thought Bioshock Infinite's ending was better than The Last of Us for immense reasons. I thought there is a moment at The Last of Us where most people are going to have to go with Joel on it, or you have to pretty much make up your mind whether you agree or disagree with him. And I completely and absolutely disagreed with him, even though I loved pretty much I was Joel throughout this entire game. Through 95% of the game, I was Joel up until that point, where I just had a huge moral conflict. Like, no, this is stupid. I just felt like the many's needs surpassed me and Ellie. It was petty and it was selfish of Joel. I thought it was stupid, and I don't like how they resolved that conflict, because I felt like it was ridiculous. Joel's actions, they were completely selfish. The lying and everything. You know what? You could have been truthful and honest about that, and I think Ellie would understand. But even with that said, okay, never mind. She wouldn't have been understanding about killing Marlene. That was ridiculous. That was also ridiculous. But still, I it I was fucking I was losing my mind right there. I was like, this is ridiculous. This is completely stupid of Joel. I was just dumbfounded. His decision was so stupid, and I completely disagreed with him, and I hated that whole entire ending and his decision. It was just terrible. I hated it. I hated that ending part. It was so bad because I just genuinely so wholeheartedly disagreed with Joel. I so and absolutely thought that it was so ridiculous. And everybody knows what Ellie's decision would have been had she been able to make that decision. She would have absolutely gone through with it. You could see it in her eyes. You could hear it. You could see it in her own eyes that she would have totally made that decision. Because she's asking him in the epilogue to tell the truth. And it's just this moment where you're like, yeah, she would have done it. She would have absolutely done it. And you've taken away that chance. And I hated Joel's decision. I thought that was the one thing in this entire game that was unjustifiable. It doesn't matter that you spent an entire year with her. To me, I thought it was ridiculous. And not to mention killing Marlene was ridiculous. But still, if there's one person that I agreed with, and I did agree with, I mean, even though I see like, it's basically the endings I have to choose through. I have to choose between the one that doesn't make sense or the one that pissed me off. Which one do I go with? I'm like, yeah, I would go with the one that doesn't make sense, because at least I was emotionally affected and I liked the ending. Did it make sense? No, but I liked it. I thought it was decent. And yeah, I thought the ending in Bioshock Infinite was done better. Not even done better. It wasn't that it was executed better. The Last of Us was executed better. It was a better scene. It was better written, better directed. But still, it was better acted. Okay, probably. I guess, yeah, I'd have to say Ashley Johnson's acting was slightly better than Elizabeth's. And that's a really hard decision, but I'd have to go with Ellie, because I don't know. I couldn't pick between Ellie and Elizabeth. I really couldn't, but yeah, that scene, it breaks my heart, because really, at the end of the day, he just squandered probably the hope for humanity for a long time. Yeah, that was ridiculous, but besides that completely pissed me off. Yeah, I'd give the ending to Bioshock Infinite for sure. So how were the overall stories then? Well, if it hasn't been apparent, The Last of Us wins. I just thought, because the problem with the Bioshock Infinite is that it made some things that didn't make sense. There were a lot of things that were just kind of stupid. And therefore, like, because that's a long explanation to tell you what doesn't make sense, just go to Spoonie's video and that will be explained. If you go to Spoonie, he'll explain why it doesn't make sense, because that's a long explanation. But yeah, besides that, Bioshock Infinite's story's great. If you took that out and you took out the weak villain and made him add more character development that we didn't need through the audio logs, because you could go through the game of Bioshock without the audio logs and it'd still be amazing. In Bioshock Infinite, that's not completely the case, and that's kind of a shame. But yeah. But besides Bioshock Infinite, The Last of Us, besides the ending that pissed me off, everything's well written, everything's well acted, everything is so perfectly done. The execution is absolutely 100% amazing, and guess what? There's nothing that doesn't make sense. Joel's actions completely make sense. Whether I agree with them or not, they make sense. They were stupid, but they made sense. And there's just a lot of there's so many great moments in The Last of Us. Just as much as there are Bioshock Infinite, that I'd have to go with The Last of Us. In terms of the overall story, even with the ending that pissed me off, I'm sure that it's a good story, and it's a timeless one at that. So yeah, I go with The Last of Us. So what is the overall verdict? Which one's better? Well, yeah, since pretty much The Last of Us won 4 out of 1, I'd have to go with The Last of Us. The Last of Us beat the living crap out of Bioshock Infinite. I mean, that ending's great. Everything, it was executed very well. It beat Bioshock Infinite, believe it or not, and I think it's gonna win Game of the Year. I think it actually, Bioshock Infinite, everybody was saying that's the winner, that's the winner, that's the winner. It just got dethroned, so that's awesome. Yeah, that's basically my entire analysis of Bioshock Infinite and The Last of Us, and going through absolutely everything. So that's that. What do you guys think? What are your guys' opinion? And what do you guys? Which one do you think won for you guys? Which one for you guys? Bioshock Infinite or The Last of Us? Put out your opinion and or analysis, video response. I want to actually see this by some more bigger YouTubers. Their opinions. I'd like to see Josh Scorcher. If Chris Duckerman does a review of The Last of Us, I'd love to see his opinion on the subject. Yeah, I'd love to see many people's opinions about this. I personally, I'd love to see everybody's opinion on this one. I'm gonna send some video responses. Why not? What are you guys' opinion? Famous YouTubers that I send this video response to. And yeah, that's gonna be awesome. Thanks. This is the Crispy Tiger, and I'm out.